Don't say I've driven you out of the room.
Members, good afternoon. First of all, can I welcome Karen to committee? And we had 3 substantive briefings scheduled. The first, an appearance by First Minister and Deputy First Minister with regard to the programme for government. Secondly, a briefing from officials on June monitoring. And finally, consideration of parts 2 and 3 of our draft bill on NIPSO, the Northern Ireland Public Service Ombudsman, that coming in closed session. We wrote to OFMdFM after our meeting of the 14th of May, just to remind them that we had scheduled a briefing for today in our forward work programme quite some time ago, and just asking for confirmation that they'd be here today. At 4:30 Friday, the committee received a letter from the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. You'll find it in your table pack at page 3, and I'll quote from that. The ministers are proposing, quote, "A briefing session is arranged before the end of this session to ensure the committee and department may derive maximum benefit from a fully informed discussion," end quote. No date has been suggested. If members have views, very, very open to them. Otherwise, I would have thought, if you're agreeable, we should ask that it comes in the next 2 weeks. As an aside, members, if you remember, we had our away day last September when we looked at strategic planning for this year. What I thought would be useful, particularly with the new clerking arrangements, would be that we review our performance against our kind of indicators from September before the end of the year, which in itself will inform our next planning session, which I suppose would be another away day in this September. So we've got a lot to get through, and I think for the last 4 sessions that we have planned this term. So it would be good, I would have thought, if we could have OFMdFM in either the first or second of the final 4 weeks. But open to views?
Sounds fine.
Yep. No contrary. So we'll ask and say we'd have a strong preference for the next one of the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Can I just say, Chair, in terms of Brenda and myself, certainly next week and the following week, we're taking evidence in relation to an inquiry that the RD are doing. And unfortunately, because of the number of people wanting to give evidence, it's running into afternoon sessions, so we're going to have to try and make sure that we're quorate in terms of taking that evidence. So, to the very effect that we're up in room 115 for both those dates. So, we'll let the clerk know about it, but we need to try and balance it out that we can work.
Okay, well. Are you asking that we?
No, I'm not asking to change anything. I'm just making, making you aware of the situation that we have, because we have obviously members in other committees as well. The fact is that on today you can't get a committee room in the afternoon. In terms of any of the committee rooms are unavailable because the other committees are meeting on the afternoon. Normally we're morning. It's not an issue, but.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. I think it's a request, and
it's just we need to balance it out. It might be a bit of to and fro.
Sure. Okay, members, and with regard to the second briefing on June monitoring, which is of course financial and therefore core business for us, the department papers regarding this issue arrived with us this afternoon at 11 minutes past noon. Officials were not in a position to discuss the 12-14-15 budget and savings delivery plan at last week's meeting, and they'd agreed therefore to brief us on those matters today. The 14-15 budget paper was also received at 12:11, and they're at page 11 of table packs. I have to say I have not had an opportunity to study. So not even study, never mind inappropriate detail. and I would ask if any member believes they have had the opportunity to study these papers in appropriate detail. And I'm going to take that silence as the fact that all 9 of us have not had appropriate time. Given the importance of it, I have to say I would not be prepared to chair a witness session or a discussion on these papers. My fear would be that down the line, if something emerges, that we will be criticised because we had the opportunity to raise an issue which we have not had the opportunity to identify and which may not be drawn to our attention by officials. Not in a sinister motive, but just it didn't happen. So if the members wish to hold this session, I will certainly withdraw for that part of the session and hand the chair over to the Deputy Chair if he is willing to take over.
Chair, I would have the same position as yourself and would agree with your position, so I would withdraw as well.
Well, if the members wish to hold the session, we will obviously have to elect a chair for that part of the session. I think we'll come to that, therefore, as we work through the agenda. Any apologies?
Stephen Mitchell.
No, my name can be removed from the apologies today.
It was removed.
Was it?
Members, the next meeting of the ECUK is on Monday the 9th. This is the biannual meeting of the chairs of the European Committees of the Commons, the Lords, Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly and our own Assembly. Unfortunately, I am not going to be able to attend because it clashes with the funeral of Sir John Gorman in Killelea. I understand the Deputy Chair is also unavailable.
That's right. Apologies,
So,
Chair.
I don't think we can delegate beyond that, so just to note, I'm afraid we will not be represented on this occasion. Page 5, members of your electronic pack, is a copy of the committee's current invitations. And then at page 7, the draft minutes of our meeting of the 28th of May of this year. Can I ask our members content to agree the draft minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you. Matters arising. Last week, the committee considered correspondence from the Victims and Survivors Service following the briefing of the 7th of May. VSS provided copies of their corporate risk register, implementation plan for the recommendations of the independent assessment report, and the communications plan for Financial Assistance Scheme 6. We agreed to consider the papers this week to allow members a further opportunity to consider. At page 14 of your pack is the clerk's brief, which highlights some of the issues arising in the document. Could I ask for comments, members? No?
No, Chair, just one of the last sessions, the new approach to Financial Assistance Scheme 6 had been raised, and victims and survivors are already starting to contact me to raise concern that the inadequate amount of resource to cover last year's scheme they're asking questions, is there going to be enough on this occasion? And I'm not sure we've had reassurances to that effect just yet, so just to raise that again.
Okay, appreciate that. We are due to get a briefing from officials on the Victims and Survivors Service before the end of the term, so could I suggest maybe we just alert officials that we would wish potentially to discuss some of the issues within these documents with them at that session. And also perhaps write to the Victims and Survivors Service, given that they are not completing all these tasks in the time frame that has been identified, and request that in the interim period that they provide us with a monthly update on progress in the risk register until such times as we're content that all the issues have been addressed. We have put a considerable amount of effort, and I think quite rightly, into this. we're now at the point where they have a timeline plan to address the issues. But if we walk away now, we won't actually monitor the actual delivery of the implementation of that plan. So I'm talking about a short-term proposal that we ask for the monthly updates.
Yeah. Chair, just one last point as well. Sorry, it's my understanding that adverts for Financial Assistance Scheme 6 issued on regional press on the 23rd of May, but I'm not sure we have we detailed the communication plan. Yeah.
Communication plan's part of the papers.
The papers, no problem, that's grand.
There was to be correspondence to MLAs, but I don't know if members have received any specific correspondence.
Anybody as an individual MLA received a letter?
I don't think so.
No.
I think we can follow that up as well.
Right, okay. Presumably that should be in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy enough, Chris?
Okay.
Okay. Members, page 52 of your pack, we have a response from the Department in relation to refugee and asylum issues. We're advised the Department has agreed in principle that there should be a crisis fund element to the Minority Ethnic Development Fund. A bid in respect of this has been submitted in June monitoring, and the response indicates the Department are exploring the possibility of third-party administration of that fund. The response also indicates the racial equality strategy is currently being finalised for submission to ministers and then will be issued for consultation. Of course, I think that has now been updated by yesterday's debate and the assurance by one of the junior ministers that it is at least clear from one half of OFMdFM. I believe the consultation document will include a question in relation to the need for a refugee integration strategy. And finally, the response states that FM and DFM make representations to the Home Secretary on individual immigration issues. In 2010, they wrote to stress the ongoing concerns and difficulties faced by MLAs in liaising on immigration issues, but the policy has not changed. Still the Home Office, and they don't interact directly with devolved representatives.
But they do interact with the MPs?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be useful if there could be some liaison point in the Home Office for MLAs and AMs and SMPs.
I think that has been tried
MSPs,
before.
sorry.
I think that has been tried before, Chair, and
Didn't work?
Foreign Office insists that
Right.
to be a member of Parliament.
Yeah. But clearly FM and DFM are the tip of the spear from our point of view currently. So. Members, given this arose after representations from the Law Centre, Red Cross and NICRAS, are you content that we forward the response to them for their information? Thank you. And in advance of the committee motion on Refugee Week and Community Relations Week, the committee requested a research paper on refugee issues from Assembly Research and Information. Are you content to receive a briefing from research next week?
Agreed.
That's a few days before the debate. Thank you. Page 58, we have a response from the Department to the committee's request for further information regarding statutory obligations in consulting with the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission, the Commissioner for Children and Young People, and children and young people themselves. The response advises us the Department is currently seeking legal advice to confirm its understanding of its statutory obligations. The Department will respond as soon as possible. Content to note? Yep. Thank you. Page 61 then, a list of outstanding correspondence. Page 64 of your pack, the Department's investing activity report for May. Then in tabled papers, page 6, correspondence from the Department advising a recruitment competition to appoint a new Commissioner for Children and Young People is to commence. Page 7, correspondence from the Department providing an update on the development of the Gender Equality Strategy. We are all content then, members. We move to item 6, which is a briefing by the Department on its 4015 budget allocations and its performance in relation to the Department's savings delivery plan for 13-14, plus June monitoring round proposals. Page 74 is the clerk's brief, followed by a copy of a paper from the Committee for Finance and Personnel on the 14-15 main estimates. Also extracts from the main estimates 14-15 for OFMdFM. The Department provided a copy of its opening 14-15 budget at 11 minutes past 12 this afternoon. That's page 11 of table packs. And then page 14 of tabled a copy of the Department's performance in relation to its savings delivery plan for 13-14. And page 17 of tabled a copy of the Department's June monitoring round proposals, also received at 11 minutes after noon today. So as previously stated, given the fact that I have not been able to give anything like adequate scrutiny to the papers, I would not be content to chair this session. The Deputy Chair has also made clear he is not content to chair. Could I therefore have a formal proposal for somebody to be interim chair?
If you withdraw, and then I can do the
You'll do that?
Deputy Chairperson.
Right, I'm going to hand over to the clerk to deal with that part of the business. And the Deputy Chair and I shall withdraw.
I think so.
So, in the absence of the Chair and Deputy Chair, I take the Chair for the election of a temporary Chairperson. And can I call on members then to propose a member as a temporary Chair?
Propose Jimmy Spratt. I second that.
Okay, so Jimmy Spratt has been proposed by Mr Maskey and seconded by Mr Robinson. Are there any other nominations? No problem. Mr Spratt, if you'd like to take the chair. So the officials that are coming to meeting and some suggested issues. This is Jim.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Okay, members, to get up to speed with this brief here for 2 seconds. Can we ask the officials to come in, Stephen? Are we here? Can I welcome Mark Bryan, Stephen Boyd and Carol Gilchrist in relation to the June monitoring round. There has been some discussion, Mark, within the committee and somewhat concerned. I think all members are concerned in relation to the late supply of the papers just a couple of hours ago. So the Chair and the Deputy Chair weren't prepared to chair the meeting, and I've been appointed by the other members to chair this session. So I'd ask you to go ahead and give your briefing and then leave yourself open for questions.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I do appreciate the difficulties that the delivery of papers at such a late time does cause the committee. And I'm going to apologise for the fact that we weren't able to get them up any earlier. We're pleased to be here today to have the opportunity to explain the Department's financial position. And I'll give the committee an update on the 14-15 opening budget position and the June monitoring round. Following on from the Executive's agreement of the budget for the period 2011-15, OFMdFM's opening total resource DEL budget for 2014-15 is £70.4 million. That compares to £73.9 million last year in 2013-14. So it's a reduction of £3.5 million year on year. Now, to help to address the situation in our baseline, the Department and its ALBs have had their budget reduced by, on average, 3%. In doing this, we have sought to avoid any impact on frontline services and staffing. And we have not reduced funding for victims and survivors, given the high priority and the sensitivity of this area. Over the course of last year, the Department received an additional £11 million resource from the monitoring process during the year through a mixture of bids, drawdowns from the Delivering Social Change central funds and technical transfers from other departments. And given the pressures across the Northern Ireland bloc, it's unlikely that we will be as successful in gaining additional resources in the year, in this current year. So the department is facing a challenging budget allocation for 2014-15. In the current situation, the department has over-allocated or over-programmed its opening budget by 2.2 million and plans to make bids to cover this over-allocation in the June monitoring round. In this context, we plan to put forward the June monitoring proposals that are before the committee. Just to go through those and explain the bids, our proposals include inescapable bids, first of all, of 4.3 million for the historical institutional abuse inquiry. There's no budget allocation in the opening budgets for the costs associated with this inquiry. It's not in our baseline. The Executive confirmed in December 2012 that the budget pressures from the inquiry would be met, and to date they've always been met in year, and DFP have indicated that they will continue to meet that pressure. 1.3 million for the Hillsborough sites. These sites were gifted by the MOD under the Hillsborough Agreement with the intention of early sale to offset some of the pressures associated with the devolution of policing and justice. But due to the timing of the Hillsborough Agreement, there was no provision for maintenance and running costs made in our baseline in CSR 2010. So we bid regularly in year for the cost of those sites. Another inescapable bid is for the Together Building a United Community Good Relations funding of 1.763 million. And this bid would take forward extending the summer intervention scheme and also the legislation for the establishment of the Equality and Good Relations Commission. Also a bid of 1.3 million for the Victims and Survivors Service to enable the level of funding for the VSS to be in line with the amount approved in the business case to establish the service. And 311,000 for the establishment of a China office and an international relations team, both of which have been approved by the Executive. So those are our inescapable bids, as we have classified them. Now, on top of these inescapable bids, we have a number of high priority bids. These include 2.984 million, again for Together Building a United Community for Good Relations, to extend a number of the Good Relations grant schemes. 0.767 million for the Victims and Survivors Service to enable it to meet the projected increased demand on the Individual Needs Programme and the Victim Support Programme. 919,000 to meet funding commitments under the Minority Ethnic Development Fund in order to fund a programme of interventions to tackle race hate crime and to create a minority ethnic crisis fund. So those are the inescapable high priority bids that we'll be making on behalf of the department. In addition, we have a role in drawing down and recommending to DFP those bids that should be made for the central funds, the Delivering Social Change funds. So in addition, we will be making a bid of £6 million for the Delivering Social Change central budget on behalf of a number of departments and ourselves. Currently, there is 14 million resource in the Delivering Social Change fund, but it's estimated that around £20 million will be required in the current year to take forward those initiatives. So in total, the department will be putting bids forward in the June monitoring round of £19.6 million. Finally, on the capital side, the position is slightly different. We have a surplus of capital, and we will be surrendering 5.5 million capital, as there's no political agreement on the Maze Long Cash site, and as ILACS has more capital than they require for the current year. So that's an outline of the opening position and the bids that we plan to make in June morning. We're happy to take questions that members may have.
Okay, Mark, thanks for that. Just the fact that our discussion before you started your presentation, we understand that there be an estimates document for all departments was laid in the business office about a week ago. Why is it then that the document was so late coming to us just a short time ago?
Well, there's a number of reasons. There's a number of processes we obviously have to go through in the department, and June monitoring comes very early in the year in terms of the various branches having to identify what their needs will be almost as soon as the year has started. So almost as soon as we identify opening budgets, branches then have to start identifying any bids or easements for the June monitoring. We also had to secure agreement to the extent of reductions that we would apply in our opening budget in order to live within the allocations that we had. So those things take time to work through, and securing that agreement within the department obviously takes time. So I can only apologise that these have taken time to get here, and that they came so close to the time of the meeting of the committee. But I'm afraid we weren't able to get them through any quicker than that.
Okay, in the savings delivery plan, in relation to the 3% savings in relation to arm's length bodies, which arm's length bodies have not met their target, and what has the department done to try and remedy the issue of failure on the part of some of those arm's length bodies?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, the position that we have on our savings delivery plan is a very positive one. We have achieved total savings of £10.2 million, which is actually in excess of the amount that was planned, which was 9.366. When we look down at the individual savings delivery plans, there are a couple of those which are red. One of them was the closure of the Economic Research Institute for Northern Ireland, and that was really due to a legal case around that, which prevented that being closed as quickly as we anticipated, which meant it's a very small overrun, underachievement of the saving there of some 20k. The larger programme, which didn't meet its objective, was the 3% reduction in the administration cost of arm's length bodies, but that is actually misleading. Because the Strategic Investment Board had two savings delivery plans, one of which fed into that general 3% reduction, and the other was for its own funding. What actually happened is that it underachieved in one of those, but quite significantly overachieved in the other, because they changed the way that they employ their staff. So in fact, we've been successful across the range of savings delivery plans in achieving the savings that were expected.
In relation to the £1.7 million savings in the victims and survivors funding being achieved, how was that achieved?
Well, Stephen will just pick up that.
You know, it seems a fair figure in relation to some of the work that has been ongoing, some of the discussions that we've had in relation to the victims and survivors.
Basically, the savings from the victims survivors funding, that would have been achieved really in the first year of the savings delivery plan, which was just got it for the 11-12 year. It basically was savings on the overall funding allocated to the department's budget. In the previous spend review, basically I think funds were consolidated together.
Yeah.
So basically it was rationalisation of the previous, how we actually delivered some of the programmes in victims and survivors funding, and consolidating it into the new victims and survivor service.
Okay. We're going to open the floor up to members now. Alex Maskey. Alex, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just thank you for your presentation. It's just what I won't rehearse, but just to echo the comments that Jimmy made. I think it's very important that we have a situation where the Chair and Vice Chair felt unable to remain here, and I think I support their frustration and their annoyance. And I did ask the Chair if he would stay, but I couldn't understand why he didn't want to, given the ongoing complaints about this. But where we are at the moment, I mean, I'm just particularly focusing on the minority ethnic funding and crisis funding, and the kind of figures that I'm looking at here. Maybe it's wrong, just sitting here, seem to be quite small, and I'm trying to work out what's the difference between the crisis funding and funding, because some of the organisations that I would see working on the cold face, trying to manage tension, trying to manage bad situations, they're basically, their structures are hand to mouth because they're dealing with crisis situations. But it's almost like crisis funding to meet mainstream needs in a given area. So trying to work out how do you evaluate the need, and what impact will this particular monitoring round have on any of that, because I don't know. and see what benefit it'll make.
Well, the budget for the funding of the Minority Ethnic Development Fund is 1.1 million. It's been 1.1 million for the last 3 years. Now that fund aims at promoting good relations between people of different ethnic backgrounds, the building of community cohesion and the promotion of integration. In the June monitoring round, we're putting forward a bid in that area of £919,000 to further enhance that. And the intention there will be that will support a programme of interventions to tackle race hate crime. For example, looking at the monitoring of tensions and so forth, and raising awareness of the importance of good relations. It will also put additional money into the budget to meet project funding of groups. A number of groups whose funding has been reduced over the last number of years. And there'll be some 200k will go into the creation of this crisis fund, which is designed to help those minority ethnic people who, through no fault of their own, fall upon hard times or are victims of attacks. So it will lead to a reasonably significant increase in the amount of funding that is available, provided that bid is met. But that would be a high priority one for ministers.
And the £200,000, is that for individuals who are on hard times, basically, or?
Yes, it's basically for any individuals who get into difficult circumstances, whether whatever the reasons for that are, or indeed if they're victims of attack.
Can I just ask you? You described in relation to the Central Food Relations Funds, you described as inescapable. And one described as high priority. Are those the two that you've just referred to?
No, there's a distinction but some overlap between the good relations bids that we would make, which would be for the broader good relations, which would include between the various communities in Northern Ireland and the minority ethnic, and the specific funding for this Minority Ethnic Development Fund, which is targeted at minority ethnic groups. Some of the good relations funding may go towards minority ethnic groups, but it's designed to promote good relations in the broader sense.
But those
There's
are
actually two bids for good relations,
Yeah.
some of which include summer interventions and summer camps and so forth, and then there's a further bid of 900k for this Minority Ethnic Development Fund, which is targeted specifically on the minority ethnic groups.
Alex? Thank you. Any other members? Alex Atwood?
Well, first of all, obviously anything I ask is without prejudice, given that the papers were received so late and haven't the time to fully assess them. My sense is that monies that are being asked for in terms of institutional abuse, victims and survivors service, and ethnic and race relations issues, they seem to me to be imperatives as opposed to anything other than that. But again, without prejudice, these are really preliminary questions because that's the best I can do. Just 3 or 4 questions. Was the delay at official level or at a ministerial level in terms of releasing papers to the committee?
Well, there's a whole range of processes we have to go through in the department in order to have papers at a point at which they can be released to the committee. So there's a whole range of areas where, for a range of reasons, with the need to make decisions, with the need to gather necessary information, and the need to have full discussion, that led to that particular situation.
So was the delay at an official level or at a political level?
So the delay was within the department.
Was there any delay at an official level?
There were delays in the broader process within the department.
You're the senior official responsible for the monitoring returns, are you?
I am.
Was there a delay at your desk?
But as I say, there's a whole range of processes that have to be gone through.
I understand the
involve-
processes. I may well have some idea about what the processes might be. I didn't have this problem when I was a minister in terms of these processes. Do you think you're responsible for the failure to get either papers to the ministers quickly enough, and thereafter the failure to get papers to the committee quickly enough?
I think there are all aspects of the process. There are parts of that, all of which could have been done perhaps more quickly. Circumstances were difficult, and unfortunately we weren't able to get them to the committee on time.
I'm none the wiser, Chair. There's a bid in for £1.3 million for monies in relation to security and other matters with respect to Hillsborough. And papers, from what I can pick up, saying that it was anticipated in 2010 some quick sale, and that consequently there was no provision made within 2010 budget for security and other related costs. Is that correct?
Well, I think the issue was that when the sites were gifted, it was at a point in time when the CSR budget had been determined, and there wasn't therefore any money put into the baseline for the department. So therefore,
the papers also say that there was anticipation of quick sale.
oh yes, there was also anticipation of quick sale, so there wasn't an expectation of the need to maintain over a longer period. So it was both those factors.
I sat on the budget subcommittee, the budget subcommittee of the executive, where SIB and others, when it came to advice about the potential disposal of assets, were forever saying there's no chance of any quick sales unless they were revenue generating, like car parks, and even there hasn't been any quick sales. How did your department make an assessment that there could be a quick sale when SIB and other people were saying there's no chances of quick sales? And how then, because that judgment in part contributed to the fact that you're now looking to 1.3 million to cover security and other related costs?
Well, I'm not sure that I would necessarily accept that. I think
that's the view of SIB. It was all the advice given.
Yes,
to
but the sites came as part of an agreement under the Hillsborough Agreement. They were made available in order to be revenue raising. So the hope was that they would be revenue raising. As it turned out, with the way the economic circumstances were, the possibility of quickly realising that revenue wasn't there, and it meant that they had to be held for longer than might have been wished for or was anticipated, and therefore there was a cost associated with that. Because that hadn't been foreseen, that element of cost had not been built into our baseline budget, and therefore we have to have an arrangement with the AFP where we get that money in year to meet those costs.
Do you not accept now that whatever was going on in 2010, you were working on a false assumption, and it was an assumption that nobody else seemed to share in government, that somehow or other something could be sold quickly?
Well, I think there was also a view, as well as the possibility of a quick sale, there was also a view taken, particularly in relation to Shackleton, that there could be wider economic and social benefit for the community other than just for a quick sale. So the perception of how the sites might be used, the view of how
that's not what you rely upon in your papers.
Changed.
That's not an argument that you rely upon in your papers. The argument you rely upon in your papers is that there might have been a quick sale. And it just seems to me that that was a false assessment made by your department at that time.
But I think
anyway, moving on.
Sorry, let the official answer the question. You asked a question and then you're going to move on to something else. Just let Mark.
But I think that the point is that when the sites were originally made available, there was the view that the intention was that they could be sold and money realised. It turned out there wasn't that possibility. Given that possibility wasn't there, there was also a view that rather than just selling them for whatever they can go for, and realising some sort of funding, it would actually be better to hold on to them and try and develop the economic and social potential, because in the longer run that would be of greater benefit to the community. So I think ministers had to react to the circumstance in which they found themselves.
Can you provide, at subsequent to this meeting, a breakdown of precisely what are the bid allocations of £6 million in respect of delivering social change? Because you refer to budgets, additional budgets for a number of programmes, but you don't give a breakdown of what budget allocations are in each of those programmes. It's Annex B on the paper.
Yeah. Well, the additional bid of £6 million is actually that amount that is required for the whole range of projects that are intended to be taken forward in this year. So it will relate that small elements to each part of a whole range of projects.
But I'm looking for a breakdown for each of the projects that you have to take forward that make up £6 million. But not now, but just subsequently you can provide that information.
Yeah.
because it's a headline figure, but it doesn't actually say what the individual figures might be for SIF or the Children's Hospice or whatever it might be.
Yes, I mean,
What's the biggest one of the 6, though?
yes,
What's the biggest?
sorry, which is the biggest? The biggest one is the signature programs. I mean, we would have intended over the course of this year on current plan that somewhere in the region of 13 million would have been spent on signature programs. SIF is actually a smaller proportion, somewhere in the region of 2.4 million. And the shortfall, when you take the whole range of things, which also includes Bright Start, funding for Playboard, Children's Hospital, you take all those things together, they total 20 million. We have 14 million, so there's a shortfall of 6 million. Now, that will all relate to elements of those projects, but the actual breakdown would depend on if this bid is met or not. And if it isn't met, ministerial decisions as to which projects they would advance more quickly than others, which ones they might seek departmental contributions to. So it's actually quite difficult to break down the 6 million across those individual elements. What we can say is the planned amount was 20 million. We have 12 million, or sorry, the planned amount is 20 million. We have 14 million. The shortfall of 6 million. How that will break down will have to be determined subsequently when we find out whether we're successful or not, and the decisions that ministers want to make on the priorities between those different elements.
What I'm looking for is a breakdown of the 6 million, how it would be planned to allocate that if you received if DFP granted your bid in full.
Well, I think what I can give you is the 20 million broken down across all the projects as what we intended to spend. Decisions haven't yet been taken on if there's a shortfall where that amount would be taken from. That's the point I'm trying to make. That would require a subsequent decision which has not been taken.
But I'm trying to work out what the breakdown of your current bid. You're looking for 6 million.
Yes.
Across the spread of individual programs. I just want to know what the spread is across the individual programs.
Yeah. Okay.
Then the money that's been looked for VSS resource, which works out in my quick maths at 6, 7 or 8% of the original resource budget. That's Annex B as well. So you're looking for £760,000 on top of an existing resource budget of 11 million, 11.5 million. Is that right?
There's actually two bids. There's one in the scale of 1.3 million, and then there's the further one that you described.
That's for
the high priority
programs, isn't it?
Well, the 1.3 million would bring the VSS back up to the amount that was set out in the original business case, and so it would effectively bring them to that approved level of funding.
That's for program costs as opposed to resource, isn't it?
That element is for a mixture of things. It includes some funding for the individual needs review and also for the victim support programme.
Yes, it includes basically the 1.3 million covers basically partly the running costs of our organisation and the individual programmes as well.
Well, I have no issue really about, don't have any issue about funding individual programmes. I'm just a bit concerned that a year into the VSS, you're looking for so much money to deal with resource issues, including around governance. And it seems to me that given that the development of the VSS took such a long time, it's another example of how, when the VSS was set up, some critical errors were made, including now the ones that were where we have to pick up, or you're trying to pick up monies to support, if you like, corporate work of the VSS. And I think it's just a collaboration of failures in the rundown to the creation of the VSS in the first instance. That's out with your responsibility, because you're the finance side of the department as opposed to the VSS management side. But I do think it's further corroboration of the concerns about how all this was managed way back then.
I think
Could you
just
provide-
maybe just to respond, while I am the finance side, I'm not going to get into the detail of the policy. I'm going to continue beyond the extent of my knowledge in this. But I mean, part of the issue here, as well as the issues that were about the governance of VSS, which are well known to this committee because there have been presentations on that, which are being addressed at the moment. Part of the processes that have been put in place have identified additional needs and have identified victims who previously hadn't been identified before. So there have been pressures emerging from the needs that have been identified out in the community. And to be fair to my policy colleagues and those who would have been trying to identify what the needs would be in this area, very, very difficult to project looking forward with any precision, just the extent of the problems that are there and are presenting themselves, because the reality is that there have been more victims presenting themselves over time, and that's created pressure on the service, and many of those have been very, very difficult to predict. So I think it's appropriate that the department responds as best it can to this, and that's what these bids are seeking to do.
And my final question then is provide in an appropriate way the salary scale for the senior staff in the VSS. Not now, obviously, but at a subsequent meeting.
Did you, Alex?
Thank you.
Okay, Leslie Creedy.
Thanks, Chair. Do you have any figures on the year end for the department?
Yes. Our provisional outturn is that we spent 99.2% of our budget. So there was an underspend of 0.8%, which is just over 600k on our resource.
How much was there an overcommitment then?
Sorry, how much was there an
Overcommitment. There was an overcommitment. How much of that was overcommitment?
Well, we did start off the year with a programmed overcommitment, as we did, as we are planning to this year. Stephen will maybe be able to identify the actual amount. But that 616k didn't so much emerge from an overcommitment as reduced requirements in the last element of the year. But that 0.5% is quite tight. It's fairly tight financial. Sorry, that 0.8% is quite tight financial management. I mean, the general rule of thumb that DFP applies to departments is that underspend should be within 1.5%. And that's what most departments would work to.
Yes, but I'm looking not at the overall picture. It's much easier, to hide behind the overall figure. I'm trying to get to see how the nuts and bolts put it together. Now, there was an overcommitment, which in fact used to be referred to as a slush fund. There also was a ceiling figure. Were those met, or did they contribute to something which is in the budget exchange?
So I think it's very important to stress that an overcommitment is not, I wouldn't accept that it's the same as or it could be described as a slush fund. An overcommitment would be in a situation where the budget that has been allocated is at the outset is not sufficient to meet the identified pressures, and a calculated and considered over-programming is put in place to ensure that priorities can be met, and that allows for what will inevitably happen, that over the course of the year some funding will become available within the department, and therefore services are not cut back only for us to find that actually resources become available and they could have been taken forward. So over-programming is a prudent approach to try and ensure we manage the budget as tightly as we can to the final outcome. And I think getting within 0.8% is a reasonable outcome in that regard.
I'll take issue with that, because I can tell you that other people have, in explaining the rationale for overcommitment, it's quite different. It's to make sure, in fact, that the budget, which was originally set down and is at risk of not being spent, that there's other projects that we move forward to take up that slack, so that money is not returned to the Treasury. That's quite a different definition of yours.
Well, certainly in our department, because we are usually starting the year with what we consider to be a baseline deficiency and pressures in what our key areas. That sort of circumstance isn't arising. What we're trying to do is to make sure we can take forward all of the programmes that are within our responsibility, and in doing that, make best use of the resource we have and bid for what we need. I mean, over the course of the year, we did not give up any resource. We did not hand back any resource that we had in our budget. And indeed, we drew down an additional 11 million of resource. So I don't think there's a case here of us not managing the resource effectively and ending up giving money back.
Was any money carried forward on the budget exchange scheme?
The budget exchange scheme doesn't operate at a departmental level. It operates at a block level.
Yeah.
And that's something you'd have to ask DFP.
You don't know how that contributes to that then?
Well, I don't think ours would have contributed in any significant way because we have a very, very small budget within the overall scheme of things.
Okay, can we look at some of the individual figures then? You mentioned a net requirement, I think, about, was it 79 million?
Yep.
At the very outset, I don't have the papers yet.
78.6 million.
That's the number.
The actual net cash requirement was 94.7. How do you explain the difference?
You want to pick that up?
If I've gotten it right, that's the resource requirement. We also have capital spend, so our capital spend would also go into our net cash requirement. So basically, the figures Mark had talked about was the resource spend. I'm just trying to see what we spent on capital last year. Just a second. On yes. Well, no, on capital. Well, basically on
It's page 277,
no, we
the
don't
estimates.
we don't have the estimates.
Sorry, you don't have the estimates.
That's the electronic page number you're looking at. Not the paper page.
You don't have that estimate? You don't have seen this book?
We don't have the estimates with us at the minute.
Oh, you don't have it with you?
We're talking about opening budget.
Well, then you know what it's like when you don't have all the figures. It can be embarrassing.
The capital, we would also capital spend.
But how much, give me detail, how much? There's a difference of 15 million there. What was it spent on? Or what was it spirited away on?
Well, we actually spent on capital last year 34 million. We spent 34, that was basically 25 million for the new financial transactions capital scheme for the loan, the SI, Strategic Investment Board, made to
College,
the University of Ulster. And we spent roughly about £9 million on developments at ILACS and on Crumlin Road Jail and the Maze Long Cash Centre. We spent about £9 million capital there.
the actual under net capital, the expenditure of non-departmental public bodies, how much are you talking about this year? Suppose there's a blank here. It was 26.5 million last year.
Much were spent on our arm's length bodies this year.
NDPBs, we call them here.
35.5 million.
Sorry, how much?
35.5 million is what we have set out in the opening budget in the paper we provided to the committee.
That's very interesting, because this here shows that there's nothing. Could I ask you then about the equal pay claim? 6.8 million has disappeared.
The legal pay claim would have been basically something we would have basically.
If you don't know, just say so.
No,
Well, let's come back to you. I think part of the difficulty
You're looking at estimates.
is I'm looking at estimates as against opening budgets and allocations, and
they're two
they're not
separate
the same.
issues.
So there's all
So
part
we're
of the
running
same.
across different definitions and we're running across different publications, and we don't have, because we weren't expecting questions on the estimates, we haven't got the estimates put with us, and there's quite an important difference between the way the figures are set out in those
Well,
two
would you have
areas.
prepared these estimates?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought you'd have known it.
We can come back to you
on
with
that.
the answer.
Could you come back on that 6.8?
Yes.
And something hopefully that you can tell me about the 119,000 good relations money. Can you give me a split of how that's going to be made up? That's an extra bid.
Of give us the figure again, the 700.
Now 919,000 you told us good relations. You're making a bid for that?
Yes, there's roughly 919,000. 200,000 for it is for the crisis funds.
Yeah. There's 555,000 for the programme of interventions to tackle race hate crime. 111,000 for the restoration of funding around a number of groups that had previously not been able to be funded under the fund. There's £30,000 for delivery of that crisis fund, and there's funding for the consultation under the on the quality strategy when it goes out to consultation.
Okay, and the last question, you referred to an interesting term, minority ethnic. What is the difference between a minority ethnic and an ethnic?
So minority ethnic is those who are. Well, I could get into a very philosophical discussion here, and I'm not the policy person, so perhaps I would be treading into an area which isn't really my expertise. So I might duck that one to an extent, but it's just it's those who wouldn't form the majority in this community, who are not of what would generally be seen as being the majority in this community. But I don't want to stand over that definition.
No, because all ethnics would fall into that category, would they not?
I think you can argue, and it has been argued, that we are a community of minorities, but you know, it all comes down to the definition, but this is towards those who be recognised. I'm sure there's a definition in the policy of who is eligible.
Well, if you ever find that out, can you let me know?
But I should stress one point on this, that the funding that is available there is not all directed towards ethnic minorities. It is also directed towards the wider community and their understanding, appreciation of and contact with those who are in minority ethnic groups, because it's about good relations between both those in the minority ethnic groups and the wider community, and that's what that fund is used for.
Okay, Chair.
Okay. I have no other indication. George.
This is a more technical question.
George Robinson, then I'll bring you back in, Alex.
Fine. Thanks, Chair. And thanks to the officials as well. My couple of questions. Historical institutional abuse inquiry. Will monies that are already spent or going to be spent on, will that be enough? Do you anticipate more spend on it coming in?
Maybe just on the back of George's question, I mean, there's indications that this historical institutional abuse inquiry will have to go on for another year. I think that's been indicated by Lord Justice Hart already. So does that 4.282 million, does that cover the additional period?
That's basically my question as well.
Yes.
That funding is for the current year, is for the 2014-15 year. So any additional funding that's required will have to be bid for next year. But as I say, we have that. That is obviously a pressure on the wider public funds. From OFMdFM's perspective, the commitment that we have is if there's agreement to that extension, then that funding will be met by the AFP. But obviously, all the steps are taken to try and make sure that expenditure is kept as constrained as far as possible within the confines of the inquiry operating procedures.
But it could attract more, could need more money.
If it goes beyond that time, then yes, it will. This is only for this current year.
Current year.
Yeah.
My understanding is that costs around 2 million a year. You're now saying that it costs around 4.25 million a year.
Last year we spent, I think, about 3.7 million on the historical institutional abuse inquiry, and it's more ramping up this year, so we need more expenditure this year.
Yeah. Okay, does that answer?
Don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge it, because it's very, very important. Very important. My other question was on the Shackleton site. Just where are we at with the Shackleton site? We appreciate and realise that the possibility that Dard headquarters will be moving on there in the next couple of years or so. But for the rest of the site, what's the plans?
So the current position is that there was a soft market testing exercise carried out, which concluded on the 24th of January. And that was looking at various options for the use of the site, and I was inviting those who were interested to come forward with a range of proposals. Those have been pulled together and are currently being considered by the department. As you mentioned, the other aspect of this is the proposal that the Department of Agriculture would move there, and we're obviously watching that carefully. And when the soft market testing was going out, provision was made for that headquarters to be situated in Shackleton. So, I mean, we've had a range of proposals in. Some are for the whole purchase of the site, some are for renting part of it or purchasing part of it. There's a whole range of uses on it. And what we're doing is we're currently considering how best to take forward the disposal or use of the site.
When should that all be complete then?
That's going to be dependent on the actual decision that's made, and the decision hasn't yet been made. It will particularly rest on whether or not the decision is taken to dispose of the site, whether that's in whole or in part, or whether the decision is taken to actually try and develop out the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alex Atwood.
It's more technical. The correspondence from the DALO, there was an appendix that shows the opening resource and capital budgets last year and this year. But it doesn't show the closing budgets last year. And in order to have a full understanding, that would be helpful. Because in Mr. Boyd's answers, he referred to capital spend last year that must be greater than what the opening budget line was, inevitably. Yeah. So it would be useful to see what is the closing budget on the both on the resource and the capital side, in order to get a sense of not just where we opened but also where we ended.
I think there's a briefing coming up on the 2nd of July in relation to that, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
But just in terms of monitoring lines in future, having that charted would be useful.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no other indications of questions, and then maybe just to sum up, there's a number of requests made. There's a request for further information from the department on the budget allocation for delivering a social change programme, which you indicated you would provide. There was also a request from Mr. Atwood in relation to the salary scale for senior staff at the VSS. There was also the issue in relation to the 6.8 million provision for equal pay, and finally the definition of minority ethnic. I think that was all of the points. Members, do you have any recollection of anything else that I haven't covered there? Can I thank all three of you very much indeed for the presentation, and if you could let us have maybe answers to those queries reasonably quickly. Members may want to use them obviously next week. So
We'll get back as soon as we can, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
okay, do members have any comments in relation to what we've just heard? Okay, members, while we're awaiting the return of the Chair and Deputy Chair, the Chair has just arrived, so I'll not move any further. On cue.
I'm more than happy.
No. Very well.
I was spared that, yeah.
We got double salary.
Oh, yes, of course. Right, members, as we are going to go into a closed session on the NIPSO bill, perhaps we should finish off the rest of the business that we would do in open session. So item 8, if you're agreeable, the draft work programme comes next, page 153 of your packs. As we're saying, I would propose that perhaps in our penultimate session we set aside a little bit of time to review our performance against the kind of strategy we agreed back in September, as a kind of prelude to our away day next September, if members are agreeable to add that in. Anything else you feel is needing to be done before the end of the term? Okay, any other business? If not, then I propose we move into closed session to consider sections of the draft NIPSO bill.
Committee room 30. This is